Interrupt the House Judiciary Committee Chairman and Democratic Congressman Gerald Nadler speaking right now in Manhattan. Let's listen.
With me are four members of the committee, Madeline Dean of Pennsylvania, Ted Deutsch of Florida, Val Demings of Florida, and Hakeem Jeffries of New York, who is also the chairman of the Democratic Caucus. The Attorney General appears to be waging a media campaign on behalf of President Trump, the very subject of the investigation at the heart of the Mueller report. Rather than letting the facts of the report speak for themselves, the Attorney General has taken unprecedented steps to spin Mueller's nearly two-year investigation. One, he summarized the report and cherry-picked findings in his March 24th letter to Congress. Two, he withheld summaries written by the special counsel that were intended for public consumption. Three, he has briefed the White House on the report before providing Congress a copy, which has helped them prepare a rebuttal response for the president. And now, the evening before the report's scheduled release, the Department of Justice has informed the committee that it will receive a copy between 11 a.m. and noon, well after the Attorney General's 9:30 a.m. press conference. This is wrong. It is contrary to the Attorney General's own words to the committee. Quote, "I do not believe it would be in the public's interest for me to attempt to summarize the full report or to release it in serial or piecemeal fashion." Close quote. It now appears the Attorney General intends to once again put his own spin on the investigative work completed by the special counsel and his team. The fact that the Attorney General is not releasing even the redacted report to Congress until after his press conference will again result in the report being presented through his own words rather than through the words of Special Counsel Mueller. The central concern here is that the Attorney General Barr is not allowing the facts of the Mueller report to speak for themselves, but is trying to bake in the narrative about the report to the benefit of the White House. And of course, he's doing this just before the holiday weekend, so it's extraordinarily difficult for anybody to react. This is wrong. It is not the proper role of the Attorney General. I should add one other thing. The Department of Justice, in a court filing in the Roger Stone case today, said that some members of Congress may get access to some of the redacted information only for use in secret. The Judiciary Committee has no knowledge of this, and this should not be read as any agreement or knowledge or assent on our part. Thank you very much. We'll take a couple of questions. That's right.
I have a question. Are you satisfied with the DOJ saying that there will be two versions, one with fewer redactions for a limited number of members of Congress?
We are certainly not satisfied with that. We've repeatedly said what is demanded by the situation, and that is that the Judiciary Committee be given the entire report and the underlying evidence so that we can make those judgments for ourselves. And the Judiciary Committee can, as has been the case in prior situations, decide which limited portions of the report might have to be kept secret so as not to reveal sources and methods of intelligence or for some other legitimate reason. But that's a decision for the committee to make, not for the Attorney General or the administration. Yes.
We'll take one more question.
Congressman, when do you plan to issue subpoenas for Mueller or anyone else for that matter?
Well, we'll have to take the time over the next couple of days to carefully read the redacted report so that we don't find out that, in fact, there's very little left out. But on the assumption that it's heavily redacted, we will most certainly issue the subpoenas in very short order.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Mueller to testify?
I'll answer that. I assume we'll probably find it useful to ask Mueller to testify, and I assume we may ask members of his team to testify. But we'll have to make those decisions after reading what we get, as inadequate as that may be.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you.
That was Congressman Gerald Nadler, the chairman of the House Judiciary Committee, laying out his problems with what has transpired since Robert Mueller's team finished their report and the problems he has with the way it's being rolled out tomorrow, accusing the Attorney General of essentially cooking the process to favor the president. Back now with the team. Mike Shields raised the notion: will it ever be enough for Democrats, even if they get a less redacted version? The leadership get a less redacted version. There are Democrats who want the original underlying documents for the investigation.
Well, I don't think there's anything wrong with them wanting to have those underlying documents and trying to get them. But I do think that sort of talking point of Democrats will never be happy. It's not. I don't really think it's that accurate, because the Democrats are asking for something pretty basic, which is to just get the report ahead of time and have time to read it, and for it to be unredacted, at least for a certain number of people who can be trusted with it. That's a pretty reasonable thing to do. And I'll just go back to, when you want people to understand what you're talking about, you embargo it. That is you can take any PR person off the street and ask them how you do that, and they will tell you that you give people time to read it, process it, ask informed questions. You don't come out and start talking about something that people don't have time to think about. You don't, and if you really want accountability, you share it with the people who are supposed to be helping hold the White House accountable, Congress. I think it's just basic.
Right, Mike, what I don't understand is, if the president has said this report fully exonerates him, he's been completely exonerated on collusion, completely exonerated on obstruction. If, in fact, that is the case, and he really believes that, although we know some of a little bit, one line of, or not even a complete line of what Mueller said, that doesn't seem to support the notion of exoneration on obstruction of justice, isn't the Attorney General acting as if there is something to hide? I mean, if you are the Attorney General and this exonerates the president, and the president says, nothing to hide here, no problem here, why would you go about this from pretty much every step the way the Attorney General has? I mean, he essentially, he writes just a 4-page summary that is clearly favorable to the president. Could have quoted the Mueller report more, but he chose to write this 4-page summary the way he did. There's complaints from the Mueller team about some of the emphasis he put on it, kind of the twist he gave to it. Then takes weeks while the president is out there speaking about how this is completely exonerated. The White House clearly has a message on this. 3 weeks go by, and now he wants to give a press conference before it's even released so that he can continue whatever narrative he wants to give, assuming that's one of the things he plans to do, and then a redacted report is released. Does that sound like somebody who's...
Yeah, I mean, look, I said to you many times that the president should not shut down the Mueller investigation when that was a thing that kept getting rumored over and over again and never, ever happened, because he should want the truth to come out. I think as much of this that can legally be made possible should be made public. I mean, you redact things for legal reasons. I'm sure Democrats will go to a judge and try and get the things that unredacted that they can, and they should follow that process. As much publicity and transparency,
to get it?
Because you legally have to. It's Department of Justice standard operating procedure under legal guidelines to not. I mean, Jeffrey can explain this better than I can as to why you have to redact certain things.
It doesn't have to be redacted in the first. But the point is, if it can be revealed to certain members of Congress in the first place, why make them jump through the hoops of going to a
Well,
judge?
that's my point. Is that they may unredact as much as they can, and then there's a question about what you unredact after that. But to get to the question, look at the circus that we're watching. Gerald Nadler just had a press conference where he's saying the Attorney General is going to spin at his press conference. So I'm going to come out and have my own press conference where I only take 3 questions. And I'm going to pre-spin and say, how dare he treat this process this way?
Well, do you blame him? Do you blame him?
Of course I do.
Why?
Because it's a circus. It's a political circus from the beginning.
But wait a minute.
Gerald Nadler has no idea what the Attorney General... All the Attorney General tomorrow may say is, at 11 o'clock, this thing's coming out. Here's the process we went through. Here's Rod Rosenstein. Here's what's going on.
And he could be changing that at this very moment.
But it's not as if this is in a vacuum. I mean, the Attorney General has testified in front of Congress, and many of the things he said certainly alarmed Democratic members of Congress in terms of the way his truthfulness, the way he was characterizing spying, things like that.
And I'm sure that will be something that they look at throughout this entire process, and the Democrats will go crazy on Capitol Hill, and they'll keep investigating, they'll keep issuing subpoenas, and that's what it'll fall into.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, but the world is full of intractable problems. This was one with a solution. This report was handed over to the Department of Justice on, I believe, March 4th.
Yeah.
Just release the thing.
That's right.
And then everybody doesn't have to have press conferences pre-judging or post-judging.
Well,
I mean, it's a very important subject. It's of interest to a great number of people. The Mueller people wrote this report in order to inform people what happened. Release the report so we can talk about the substance
and by
instead
the way,
of this ridiculous procedural process nonsense.
The House voted unanimously, might I remind you, to release everything in the report, and they don't vote unanimously on anything. The president was out there saying, after the Barr's summary letter, which he doesn't like to call a summary, after that letter said, let it all out there.
Here's the thing. It's going to get out. It's going to get out.
No, but
That's the other part of
some
it. It doesn't
very
matter what they
interesting-
try to not get out. It will get out.
Yeah, but
Nadler used some very interesting language there. He referred to the summaries intended for public consumption by the special prosecutor. I'm going to assume that was not said accidentally, that presumes some knowledge, perhaps, that they've talked to people around, speculating here, around Mueller and the investigation, that indeed it was intended that those summaries be released.
we don't know.
No, we don't. But I'm saying it interests me that Nadler used that language.
But we also don't know. We don't. Just to come from the other side here, we don't actually. I'm willing to believe that this might be less redacted than we think it's going to be tomorrow.
That's the
I think
other
that it's right.
possibility.
I mean, I think it is. The president has made so many comments about let it all out there that it's going to be really hard for them to assert executive privilege on certain things after he has done that. So I think it's possible we will actually, be sitting here tomorrow and we will be talking about how much of it we got to see. We don't know. My issue is I'm not taking advance issue with what may or may not be visible because I don't know yet. Right. I am questioning why you need to hold a press conference to explain to us methods and how to read a color coding chart before we read it, because you could actually probably put that out in a document and then we could ask questions. That's what I'm talking about.
I think Barr has also said, to Carl's point, I think he said that some of those summaries in his testimony were not completely vetted, and that's in his eyes. I mean, in Mueller's team eyes, maybe they were. Maybe Barr saw it differently.
Well, he was
no
also
idea.
asked and indicated that Mr. Mueller might not have agreed with the process that Mr. Barr is going through. This is all speculative, and we all need to sit back and wait till tomorrow. At the same time, I think everybody at this table, including Mike, has agreed this thing ought to be out there in full.
Both Republicans and Democrats have agreed that Mueller should come testify about this as well.
Now, let's take a quick break. There's more breaking news also to talk about on the Barr press conference.